So overall, Samantha, what were your impressions of the wines we tasted in the last few days?
For me, what I'll take away from these tastings was the overarching consistency of quality.
Consistency of quality.
Yeah.
And for you, Luke?
We've seen a range of styles. I think we've started to see individuality within the regions as well across the Cape.
And Maggie, anything to add?
Yeah, I think, it's been a great couple of days, but it has been a treasure hunting exercise.
Yes.
There are some gems there, but we had to find them.
And the good thing for me, overseeing all the panels, I agree, the consistency of quality, but there were highlights in every single part in terms of great varieties, in terms of the sense of place. It's beginning to get there, and that's quite exciting for South Africa.
Yeah.
So Maggie, what red grape variety surprised you the most?
So it wasn't so much surprising, but I really enjoyed tasting the Sanso flights, both when it was singular and as a blend. I think it's found its place in South Africa. And, it really represents, how I would, of styles of wines I would like to drink in a hot country. It's crunchy, light, fresh, you can chill it down. And so to me, that is South Africa.
So Sanso is a highlight for Maggie.
Yep.
Luke, what were the highlights for you?
I had two, if I may.
Go on.
I thought the Pinotage flights were fascinating. From a personal perspective, my limited exposure to Pinotage in the UK, we were really exposed to trying different styles of Pinotage. I also love the Syrah flight. I think Syrah has a great opportunity in South Africa, and it was really compelling to taste so many great examples.
So Sanso, Syrah, Pinotage, and for you, Samantha?
For me, I really enjoyed the Bordeaux blends that we've looked at in the last few days. I thought the freshness coming through from some of those wines made them a real of a style that could compete with the rest of the world.
So interesting that we're all talking about highlights. We're talking about reds. Any whites that you could?
I guess, in terms of surprising, I was surprised by Sauvignon. I think a few people know it's not my favourite variety, but there was a huge range of style on show, which is not always the case when you're faced with 12 Sauvignon Blancs as a judge. So that was really refreshing.
Sauvignon Blanc. I've seen some great flights of Sauvignon Semillon blends. I think you tasted some of them.
Very much so, echoing Maggie. Sauvignon Blanc Semillon blend was certainly a fascination and interest. I didn't think we'd see the quality we did in the flight. Can be tricky as a judge to taste through a lot of Sauvignon Blanc.
And very, very good use of oak on those flights.
Very good use of oak. A range of use of oak, different toasting, different expressions of oak, but well managed.
Anything that took your attention in terms of whites?
For me, again, it was Sauvignon Blanc, but it was the breadth of age of some of those wines, because I think, from a supermarket perspective, you often get super fresh, early release Sauvignon Blanc, and I really enjoyed tasting wines that were, 3, 4, 5 years old.
A little bit more depth, more layers and complexity.
Looking at the evolution of those wines.
Cool. So we spoke about Sauvignon, Semillon, and others. What about Chenin Blanc? Did it deliver to your expectations?
For me, I was hoping for more Chenin Blanc. We only got one flight across the 3, and as a personal big fan of Chenin Blanc, I was looking for some more. But I thought the quality that we did see was great, and again, a breadth of styles from ornate through to kind of more rich, opulent styles.
Maggie?
Yeah, I was surprised not to see more, and disappointed. But there were some really great ones. That the one that you kind of gave us blind, we kind of all thought Chardonnay was fantastic. The oak was amazing. I think it wasn't representative of what South Africa has to offer. So I definitely encourage more producers to get Chenin in front of us. It's a variety in the UK that people are really starting to follow and understand. So send in more.
Look, what are your impressions of Chenin?
I can only reiterate the comments so far. I think as the signature grape variety of South Africa, it would be lovely to see a wider representation. From an on-trade perspective, Chenin Blanc can be an extremely versatile and useful tool for us to use at various ends of the wine list, from entry up until premium. And it'd be lovely to represent those on some of our wine lists. So I would love to see more Chenin Blanc in the next.
And maybe
IWSC.
show more ambition, a lower yields, a little bit more of user folk without overdoing it. And I've seen some good examples, and I've seen one or two excellent examples. Perhaps I agree with you. Maybe we didn't see, as Maggie said, we didn't see enough, but we saw some highlights. I think we all agree.
Yeah.
So what about pinotage? What are your thoughts on pinotage, Samantha?
I think it's great that from a supermarket customer's perspective is lesser known. Obviously, it being more closely linked to South Africa, but there's some great commercial styles, and I mean that in the best possible way. I think it definitely has a role to play in differentiating South Africa from the rest of the world.
Luke, what was your impression of pinotage?
I love the pinotage. Like I mentioned earlier, I have a limited exposure to pinotage in the UK, so tasting a range of styles, different winemaking techniques, picking dates, use of oak, extraction. I tasted a lovely range, and I'm really excited by what's happening here. I think you can really taste the difference.
So Maggie, what about pinotage? What are your impressions?
I was somewhat disappointed. I think maybe I wasn't as lucky in the flights that I received, in that we didn't see as many different styles of pinotage. There are a lot of that really classic, rich style, which really goes down well with consumers, ours as well. But I kept hearing from the local judges about the new styles, about carbonic pinotage,
lighter styles,
exactly, which is on trend in the UK. Less oak, more purity of fruit. Something again that you can chill down, lower alcohol. That's the style that would excite me, and what I'm going to now look for, since I've heard it from the local judges.
Okay. I think from my perspective, I've seen pinotage from all the panels, and I was somewhat impressed by the development of quality that I found for the last 5 years or so. I think they're getting people who are really taking pinotage seriously, lowering the yield and using less oak, and just being more diligent. I found some really great pinotage, and from the overall impression, for me, was quite positive. So outside the most prominent grapes grown in South Africa, anything else that made you impressed you?
So actually, I know it's a prominent variety, but I was seriously impressed with the Chardonnay. It's not necessarily something I've always thought to go to for South Africa, but there are some seriously impressive wines on show there, and breadth of styles, and we had more Chardonnays to taste than we did Chenins, which I never thought would happen.
But for me, the white blends coming out of South Africa are super interesting, and some of the more kind of some of the Rhone variety wines that I've seen over the last few months.
I think there was a flight of really unusual whites, not unusual for South Africa, Grenache Blanc, Barino, Viognier, and there was some, don't know which panel it was, but there was some nice wines there, well made, correctly made, but nothing really that was outstanding, and I don't think nothing got a gold medal. Perhaps there's room for improvement there.
But I think also maybe that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think that South Africa is still finding itself, and the fact that we're also impressed with classic varieties that you can find anywhere in the world, I think says a lot for South Africa.
Just focus on
their
what
quality is only increasing, and they can really compete at an international level. And especially, we were discussing before about the value they offer. I think that's incredibly important to note as well. While we don't know what the prices were, consistently we've said that the value that you can find here is really hard to beat.
I think overall the number of medals, not so many gold medals, but a lot of silver medals, and illustrate what Maggie's saying. There is consistency of quality across the range in terms of varieties, and also throughout the regions, which is good news. So Samantha, what is, in your opinion, the currently perceived image of South Africa in the UK?
I think from a supermarket perspective, what South Africa has to offer is consistency and value for money. And I think that the challenge that South Africa has within the kind of mass market of the UK is that it does have a reputation of being kind of entry to mid-tier wines. I think, you know, anyone who works in the trade and all of us who've had the pleasure of tasting this week knows the quality that's there. But I think for us as a supermarket, that doesn't quite translate to our customers. I think they see South Africa as a very solid choice for lower price points. It's harder to trade customers up within South Africa, unfortunately.
That's interesting. So the same for the on-trade, Luke?
I think it's a different perspective from the on-trade because perhaps sommeliers are looking with a slightly different lens. I see South Africa as a very exciting place for unusual grape varieties, winemaking techniques, different styles, and then the opportunity to have fantastic value in categories where perhaps they've been outpriced. We take Burgundy, for example. We are all looking for value alternative, and there is opportunity in South Africa to translate that into the glass for our guests. So I suppose echoing what Sam was saying about the value and consistency at the entry level, we see that. But then we also see the space within to have fun with these wines, to show them to our guests as alternatives from the classics.
From your side, maybe?
Yeah, I guess, you know, premium off-trade, South Africa is continuing to grow, which is obviously fantastic, but it is still very much a hand sell, and I think that echoes what Sam says. You know, we're lucky in that we employ people that, you know, have the capacity to do that hand selling and have the time as well. So, you know, it's you know, it doesn't fly off the shelf. It's not a Chablis, but, you know, when people come in and they're looking for something that's potentially something unusual or a classic alternative, then South Africa always performs incredibly well if we're giving that opportunity to hand sell it.
That's good. So Samantha, from the off-trade perspective, what the opportunities are for South African wine producers in the UK?
So I think, you know, what I've taken away from this week is some of the stories that we've heard. So we've had a great introduction and tasting into the Old Vine project. There's obviously fantastic fair trade initiatives that are going on in communities around the Cape, and I think the opportunity for South African producers and brands from a supermarket perspective is talking to customers about those stories. There's such a rich culture and history, and I'll be totally honest, I've seen a lot of white labels. They don't stand out for customers when they're in a supermarket and they're looking at a shelf and they are deciding whether to buy a wine from South Africa, from Australia, from Chile, from New Zealand, and that for me is the plea to producers is to, you know, own South Africa, talk about those stories, talk about the people who are involved in making those wines, and translate that for customers.
What about you, Maggie?
Yeah, I think it's a similar thought process at the premium side of off-trade, is that certainly the stories are what sell the wines. It's not enough to have good wine and good packaging. You're competing with every other wine that's available in the world. You know, the UK is incredibly spoiled. People have to really want to sell your wine. So, you know, don't just slap a fun label on some nice juice. Like, tell us what we should be saying to our customers, and really believe in that story.
Looking for the on-trade?
For the on-trade, it's the translation of history that South Africa has to offer. Winemaking has been here for a few hundred years, and I think we've had the opportunity this week to see some of that historical reference part. So, as well as the stories behind what the winemaker's doing now, you know, I think there is the opportunity to use the past as a reference point for certainly some of the historic wines.
So Maggie, what about Pinotage? Does it have a future in the UK?
I mean, like we've said previously, consumers really like the style. I think it's difficult when you see a bottle of Pinotage to know what you're going to, you know, they keep talking about this new style of Pinotage. How am I meant to know it's the new style of Pinotage? That's difficult for consumers. They want a, you know, buying wine for them is risk aversion. Tell us, you know, put it on your label. Is it carbonic Pinotage? Make sure that's known. But yeah, you know what? I'm ready for Pinotage to have a bright future. I'm ready to embrace it. Let's bring it on.
Samantha, does Pinotage has a bright future in your off-trade in the UK for you?
Yeah, like I said, I think we've tasted some great examples that are very consumer friendly. I think, again, South Africa needs to own Pinotage in the same way that Argentina's owned Malbec, and make that your own and run with it.
Luke, what about Pinotage in the on-trade?
Yes, definitely. I think there's space for Pinotage. South Africa has to use it as its own. But as Maggie said, talk about the styles, what's in the glass, translate that through to the consumer. We're here to do that. But,
Help us
do that. Help us do that. But I do think there's a place. Yeah,
great. So, in terms of improving quality, what would be your message for South African producers, Maggie?
For me, it's very much lay off the new oak on some of these lighter styles of grape varieties. We want to see where this grape variety was grown. They talk about the huge array of soils in South Africa and the ancient soils. I want to taste that. I don't necessarily want
sense
to
of
taste
place.
Exactly. I don't necessarily want to taste a huge whack of toasty oak which obliterates any character that might have been there before. So that is my plea.
What about you, Samantha?
For me, I'm going to go back to the marketing and the look and feel of the products rather than what's in the bottle. I think, from my perspective, South Africa has so much to offer from a qualitative perspective. But own the origin, own the sense of place, and talk to consumers. Why should they buy into brand South Africa?
Yeah. I didn't see too many faulty wines. So,
Very few,
which is excellent. I think it's a really good news for South Africa. So, do you have anything to add to the producers in terms of improving quality, Luke?
Well, as you say, there weren't too many faulty wines at all. There was a lot of consistency. Perhaps on the opposite, there might be a risk of under wine making. So, for producers, we want to see the energy that's in the wines. We want to see character, interest. Sometimes don't play it too safe either. There is a range of climates, styles, grape varieties, opportunities here. Have fun with what there is to work with.
I think the job we've done in the last few days, we're quite strict judges. So if we are rewarding people who are ambitious, who are making great quality wines. So I think the message that I would give to the producer: listen, go in. Look out for the ones who actually won gold medals and see what they are doing in terms of quality, in terms of use of oak, as you suggested, and stylistically what they are doing. And I think it's a good benchmark in terms of what to do going forward.
Yeah.
So in terms of opportunity for South African producers in the UK, Maggie, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, absolutely. I get a lot of emails regarding producers wanting their wines in the UK. My first point would be, please do some research. Do some Googling, see what prices that your colleagues in winemaking are in supermarkets. Do you want to be in a supermarket? Do you want to be independent retail? Do you want to be in on-trade? Think about where your wines might fit the ethos of the distributors that you're looking at. I cannot stress enough that if you've done some research beforehand, buyers appreciate it because you're coming to them having looked at the portfolio and saying, I think we have something that could work here, as opposed to, dear buyer, I'd like my wines in the UK, which ultimately I will probably end up with it being ignored.
And for you, Luke, what are the opportunities you see for South African wine producers in the UK?
I think there are many ways to look at this. In a world where the prices are rising for the classic wines of the world, there's the fit to look at replacing some of those wines or slot into where they used to fit to offer value on the wine list. The examples of Chardonnay we've seen, I'd be perfectly happy drinking those as alternatives to some of the classics we will love and have great pleasure in. We've mentioned Pinotage. Sommeliers are always looking for new up-and-coming things. They're looking for alternatives, indigenous grape varieties or grape varieties that are fun. Pinotage is certainly one of those. And then to highlight a message, I suppose, from an on-trade perspective, our consumers are more aware of sustainability going forward. I would suggest that a lot is being done already in South Africa, but do talk about that message, do really invest in those projects, looking at things like lighter weight packaging, not as important as it used to be for that premium message. So yeah, indigenous and fun styles, replacements or alternatives for the classics, and then focusing on sustainability.
Good. There also, you mentioned Burgundy and Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, but also there's some great Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot blends that could be an added offer to Bordeaux. They're getting more expensive. In terms of off-trade, Samantha?
I would urge producers to look globally at their competitive set. So, you know, some of our customers come into a supermarket with a price point in mind. They don't know what country of origin they're going to buy wine from. So do look at, you know, other New World producers and those that are doing well in the UK for, you know, inspiration and benchmarking.
Look, in your opinion, what makes South Africa so special?
I think it's the camaraderie of producers, friends, relationships. I think it's these relationships that are really woven through the fabric of South Africa with wine producers.
For the people, really.
Yeah, the people.
Maggie?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite annoying because I was going to say the same thing. So in addition to that, I would really say that they have the camaraderie and respect for different styles. As you know, just because you are a funky new wave producer focusing on Sanso doesn't mean you don't have respect for the classics. So the people that really put South Africa on the premium map, and particularly in the UK, you know, those guys, you know, the Cannacops of the world, the Vergelijkens, they really paved the way and allowed everyone to kind of see what South Africa could do.
And by the way, winemaking with this load shedding, that is what makes this place special.
Yeah.
You've just seen the lights have come back on.
Incredible.
How these people manage to make wines.
Be so resourceful.
Yeah,
exactly.
For sure.
Samantha?
For me, it's those stories. Like I said, it's the sustainability efforts, it's the community efforts, it's things like the Old Vine Project. It's like nowhere else in the world, and you know, I think the wines are reflective of that. And
the sheer beauty of the place, and the ability to make wines that have an amazing richness from the sunlight, but at the same time having that structure from almost like an old structure, lovely freshness and really sophisticated structure. So have that amazing stylistic difference together with, as I said, people, together the stories, the Old Vine Project, sustainability. I think South Africa is in a very good place.
Oh, for sure.
But I think the future is, the best is yet to come, hopefully.